to the intro, so we'll go ahead.
I've met some of you before. I've been a criminal defense attorney now for almost 24 years. 7 of those years were as a public defender. The last 15 years or so have been running my own business, having a private practice. I've represented indigent people the entire time. I've picked nearly 80 juries, ranging from murder cases to misdemeanor cases. I'm running as an independent. So these Democrats are going to decide among themselves who's going to face me in November at the general election. And I hope that you vote for me, Sean Conway, at that time. I've never ran for office, but a lot of politicians use adjectives to describe themselves. And you see them in the yard signs. They end up in our landfills every year. It's just empty words, you know. For example, experience. What does that mean? I am experienced, not just 24 years of criminal defense experience, but representing indigent people. I had my bar license on the line at one point in time. I had a First Amendment case defending a man named Mel Brooks, ironically enough. You can look him up on my website. It's a funny story in some regards, but the First Amendment was tested. I stood up for that man. He gave me no money.
Time.
Indigent man. I'm going to respect the time limits and end it right there. I'll talk to you all soon. Thank you.
I'm a little shorter than he is. Good evening, everyone. My name is Ruby Lenora Green, and I am going to be your next Broward County Public Defender. I am a mother of 1. I am currently an assistant public defender, and we are going to change the structure of the Broward County Public Defender's Office. We are going to ensure that we are going to reduce the revolving door for our clients. We're going to make sure that we do not burn the bridges, and they have access to quality mental health care, substance abuse programs, jobs, and mainly health care. That's going to reduce the revolving door, and we're going to boost the office morale. The attorneys at the office are not valued. Most of them have way too many cases and have to go to way too many courtrooms. They're underpaid, especially for the experienced attorneys. And then we're also going to promote criminal justice reform. We're going to fight mandatory minimums. We're going to make sure that we decrease sentencing disparities. So in August of 18th of 2020, vote green for change to be seen. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? No. Lights on? No. Okay, hopefully that works. I'll bend down a little bit. Good evening, everyone. It seems like we lost half the crowd. Sort of understandable, but there's only 3 of us, so we'll move it along pretty quickly. My name is Tom Lynch. I'm running for the public defender. I was an assistant public defender. Al Schreiber hired me right out of law school. I became chief assistant public defender in about 2 years. I tried 90 jury trials in the public defender's office, including about a dozen death penalty cases by myself. And I'm running for public defender. When Howard decided not to run, I decided I'm in. After I left the public defender's office, I opened up a law practice. I ran for judge. I was 33 years old. I was fortunate enough, and I was elected. I served on the bench for 32 years. Left the bench, or retired for about 12 hours, and started law practice again. And that's what I'm doing now. And when the public defender's office came up, and Howard, like I said, decided not to run, I decided I would. I've got some ideas, but I got 1 second, so I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, so we're tight for time, as everybody said. Thank you. We had a more innocuous one to start, but we're going to go ahead right into one that's on a lot of people's minds. Having worked there myself for a long time, many assistant public defenders have griped that chief assistants don't carry caseloads. That leaves many of the younger PDs with a crushing caseload and without an experienced hand to lean on in the courtrooms. If you're elected, will there be an organizational change? Will it remain the same as it is? And again, we recognize that chiefs have administrative functions as well. However, if there's a reorganization, will you move to make sure that assistant chiefs, that chief assistants also carry caseloads?
There you go. The envelope, please.
podium, Mr. Lynch.
Great, thank you. I couldn't have asked for a better question. That's one of my main issues. When I was Chief Assistant Public Defender, I was Chief of Misdemeanors, I was Chief of Juvenile, I was Chief of County Court, and Chief of Mental Health, and I had a full caseload. As I understand it, from what everyone tells me, the chiefs don't have caseloads, the supervisors don't have caseloads. I don't understand that. I just don't understand that. Public defenders should be and will be trial lawyers, and I don't understand how you can be a trial lawyer if you're a supervisor and you don't have a caseload. You have new people coming in, their caseloads are way too high, tremendously high, and you've got supervisors and chiefs that are absolutely not trying cases. I don't understand it. When I came into the office, it was fantastic. Number one, everyone loved it. Everyone loved working there. We learned how to be trial lawyers. Everyone had everyone's back. There was someone in that office who could answer any single question I had, and that's what I hope we can get going again. It's absolutely imperative that supervisors and chiefs have a full caseload. Certainly they can have some
Time.
diminished.
When I decided to run for public defender, that was the main reason When I decided to run for public defender, that was the primary reason, was I saw that there were, like Tom said, at least a dozen attorneys working there that are making six figures. I don't know if you noticed that as well. Who, frankly, they're the best lawyers that are out there, and they really would benefit the clients, the taxpayers, and the voters, and just everybody who works there would be, the morale would really improve. The other thing I mentioned is I was going to take on cases too. Something I enjoy doing. If I was a public defender, I would stay in there all the time. You're in court in the morning. You got administrators who run things. You don't have to pretend to be a human resources expert or an accountant or anything like that. You've got professionals who are doing that. You got to stay in the courtroom so you can see what's going on. It's something I enjoy doing. Like I said, I've tried cases for the past 24 years. I'm actively representing indigent people. I was in court today on one. It's something I intend to do, and that was the main reason I ran. I made it part of my platform. So if you go to my website, you'll see I have a whole platform on there about how to save money for everybody.
Be a bit more informal this time. Mr. Lynch, are you going to carry cases yourself? Are you going to try cases?
Sure, I'll try cases. Absolutely, looking forward to it. I won't try death after cases.
Ruby, this screen, sorry.
Most of the information that our administration have now is filtered information. That means that it comes from the attorneys on up. That's not the right way to go. You need to be there so that you know what's going on. We don't just need to have people, oh, you just tell me, let me know what's going on. But if you were there, you would know. And as the chief of county court, I was there. I was there in the trenches with my attorneys. I was there trying cases with my attorneys. I was there holding their hands and training them if needed be. That's what I did. But what did the administration do? They decided to reprimand me for going to court. They said that chiefs should not go to court because it diminishes their chief authority. And that's wrong. And I decided that as a public defender, I'm going to do all of the above and more. Thank you.
I get a brief response at this point?
You get
45 seconds, okay. You know, when I was a public defender, like I told you, I loved it. And every single person that I worked with loved it. And people who can't afford attorneys deserve to have great attorneys. And in order to do that, they need training. I have friends of mine that are tremendous lawyers, civil and criminal, that have volunteered to train the new lawyers coming in. And if you give the supervisors and give the chiefs some caseloads, the other cases diminish, the numbers diminish for the newer people coming in. It's going to work. It's absolutely going to work. I think it will be great, just like Al Schreiber had it when I was a public defender. Thank you.
When the Parkland shooting defendant Nicholas Cruz was arrested, the Broward Public Defender's Office immediately admitted he would plead guilty if the state would waive the death penalty. Do you agree with this approach? The office handles numerous cases in which guilt is barely in question, but conceding guilt at the outset has not been a tactic, generally speaking. Can you all but concede guilt and still effectively represent someone whose constitutional rights, freedoms, and very lives are at stake? And on the specific question of Mr. Cruz, is there, I'm not asking you to speak for the office, I'm asking you to speak for the office that you would run. Is there any reason that we do not simply plead guilty for the guilt phase and move straight into the penalty phase? So all of that is wrapped in one question that's going to Mr. Conway.
We have to admit, that's a very tough case. You get cases from all different spectrums that come in front of you, but I would say one of the most disappointing things in the representation that's currently going on is there was no discovery done in that case. There's a lot of unanswered questions. There's been a lot of witnesses that could have been interviewed first or deposed. You could have waited until the discovery process was done. He wasn't going to get bond. That man's not going to get bond under any circumstances. So you had time to do those things. I think rushing to justice like that was not the way to go. One of the things that's going on in the current office, they say, when I was working there for about 7 years, 5 years here, I also worked at Pensacola, way out in the Panhandle as a public defender. That's where I started out. I'm from Broward County. I came back. One of the things I noticed working at different offices that gave you a good perspective, a way to do things, is I noticed here, they said, when new administration was there, took over, said, you can't plead people out at arraignment. You just can't do that. And it was a policy that was hard, fast, and put in place, but it wasn't workable. We had a lot of people who sometimes just needed to plea out and get out because it was the best thing. They knew it was in their best interest. And I don't think in my office I'm going to have some kind of policy that has to be forced and steadfast like that. But in the Cruz case, I think discovery should have been explored. It was just, that was one of the shortcomings, I think, in the representation in that case.
Do you think that there's an opportunity here to enter a guilty plea now and spare the trial and go straight into the penalty phase?
Well, that would be wrong of me to say because I'm not the attorney on that case. I don't know. I haven't spoken to the young man. I haven't seen all the discovery myself, so I couldn't say that. I would obviously have to look at that. I think one of the great things I'm looking forward to is having everybody meet together sometimes during lunch and just talk about cases. Something we used to do in Mr. Schreiber's office. And I just know the morale is bad there. I think that's something I would discuss with those lawyers. I don't know because I don't represent Mr. Cruz and I haven't seen the discovery.
Thank you. Ms. Green?
I wouldn't have done that. I wouldn't have done it right at the outset. I'm going to let you know that. And I wouldn't have cried on TV either. Just saying. I think that as public defenders, like, we have a duty to represent our clients. And sometimes we know that maybe they did do something bad, but we don't just go out and say, oh, he's guilty. Just go take your plea, man. Go take your plea. That's not what we do. That's not being an attorney. That's not being a zealous advocate. And long story short, that shouldn't have happened that way. I don't think.
I agree with, can you hear me? Here we go. I agree with both of the people that just spoke. A trial lawyer needs to get ready for trial. I'm not saying eventually it might not be a plea or eventually you may go to the penalty phase, but within days of the arrest, you just don't announce that you'll plead someone to mandatory life and just to cut a deal that quick. That's not the way to do it, and I would not have done it. And if I'm fortunate enough to become the public defender, I won't do something like that.
Your Honor, a quick follow-up, if you don't mind. You mentioned before that you would not try death penalty cases. Could you elaborate? Why did you say that?
Sure.
Or did I not hear you correctly?
Sure. I tried an awful lot of death penalty cases. They're critical. They're the most important cases that the public defender does. And I think put together a trial team without me, I'll have some administrative duties to do. But a tight trial team will get the job done.
What's the question? Would I represent the death penalty cases myself?
No, you have an opportunity to
Oh.
follow up on their.
Well, I think that's smart. If you're running the office, you don't want to put people in the positions that they're not qualified to do. I do think that there's been a lot of attorneys who have left who were death qualified, and that's something you really have to train for. You got to be sent to seminars, and you want to retain those attorneys. I know some people went into insurance defense, and they're really not like it. They want to be back at that office where they want to be, and they should have been there. So those people are the ones that the office needs, especially for the taxpayers as well. There could be complications if you have the wrong people in the wrong spot. It's better for the clients, it's better for the voters, it's better for the employees, the people who work there currently. They're being overstaffed. Every time these people leave, they get cases put on them. Meanwhile, there's 13 attorneys, I think it is now, there's supervisors who don't have a caseload. Those people could be involved in some of these cases. And I think that's where it should be a team approach. And I think a lot of times it's not like it used to be. I'd like to see the office set like that again.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Green. And a great thing, Florida raised the starting salary for state attorneys and public defenders to $50,000 a year. Still not enough, but it was something. But unfortunately, that's created the so-called issue of so-called compression, where public defenders who've been working for many years are suddenly making less or the same as new hires. The Broward State Attorney's Office has already given some raises to some of the existing orders. How will you address the issue if elected public defender?
When the legislature had first said that they were going to be addressing the issue as to whether or not or how much they're going to be giving public defenders some money, we got an email. And the email said, Carlos Martinez and Catherine Fernandez-Rondo are going to Tallahassee to fight for their people to get more money. What am I going to do with an email? I am going to go to Tallahassee too and fight for my people, my attorneys, my staff to get more funding. Not only from the legislature, but from anywhere else that I can. And I think that it just makes sense. We need to audit the books. It doesn't make sense that we're just sitting on our behinds, that we're sending emails. Something needs to be done. And we need to go be the ones that go and do it. If we're leaving the office, we need to take that stance, and we need to make sure that the people in which we serve are getting the value. They're getting paid the way that they should be paid because they do so much. We have attorneys that are in the office that are working multiple jobs. I was one of them. At some points, I had 3 jobs. So that shouldn't be happening. Thank you.
I think the question was, how are you going to do that? And what I'm trying to say is, the question was really, how are you going to do that? And so we all agreed with what Ruby said, is, yeah, it's not right the way it's unfunded, but I've actually, when I ran, I'm one of the only candidates who actually put a plan out there. I had a 5-point platform. Some things on there about increasing technology use. We used to have a direct video link between the sheriff's office and the PD. Back when it's gone for the last 15 years. But how you would save money is if those 13 lawyers who are making 6 figures actually had to start carrying cases, they wouldn't have to hire the attorneys to actually carry on the cases. So that's just simple economics right there. That money's going to be redistributed. And that money's there. It's already there. So that's the simple answer to the question. The money's already there.
I agree. I think you have to go to Tallahassee. It's going to be a tough sell up in Tallahassee for Broward County, and Broward County Public Defenders is even a tougher sell in Tallahassee. But we have some friends there. We can get the job done, I believe. Absolutely, they need to get some raises for the people who came in a year or 2 years earlier and making less than the people who were recently hired. There's another issue. There's $50 that comes from each defendant represented by the public defender unless you're acquitted. And that money goes to the clerk's office, and Howard and Gordon have requested an audit, but they haven't followed up on it. I'd follow up real quick, because I don't know how much is there, but some people say as much as $1 million, and I'll talk about it later, I guess.
regards to the money issue, we'll ask all three, Mr. Lynch and Mr. Conley, on the screen, and of course you close on the screen. But, you know, the office, just like with the state attorney's office, has been organizationally the same since like 1976 in most fashions. So any type of major reorganization kind of ideas, or again, all these young lawyers are very technologically savvy. If you don't replace support staff or other people, I'm not talking about firing people, but there should be a lot of ways you can get more money to the lawyers, and if you pay them like lawyers, you pay them about $20 a year, they'll never leave.
Budget, Michael first. Okay. Yeah, I think the reorganization is very simple. Caseloads for all. And that way you can minimize the number of lawyers that you hire. By the way, you go back to the clerk's office on that $1 million or whatever she's holding and demand an audit. I give her 45 days to come up with an audit, because the public defender's office can use that money for salaries and other things. And if that doesn't happen, there's always litigation.
Thank you. Well, one of the things, like I already mentioned it earlier, is if those attorneys are returned to the courtroom, while those supervisors make 6 figures. I mean, the state attorney's office does that. Their supervisors, the ones who are, we all know as defense lawyers, you try to get a plea offer, you can't because they're supervisors in trial. It's not uncommon. So that's one way, and I already discussed that. That was one of my main campaign reasons. But the other thing I put on, when I decided I'm running, one of the things I put out there is I'm going to explore the idea of letting attorneys do outside work, outside private work, not criminal. The statute allows for it. It says the elected public defender can't. It just says the associate public defenders shall, just be, you can do other areas of law. And it happens all around the state. From practicing in the Panhandle, I learned that. That's a way they can make money as well. As long as they don't interfere, they don't take time off. It's something I would explore. I've already looked at some ways to do it. Check out my website, you'll see. I think that's a way to save money. Keep those people in the office. Do some real estate work. Do personal injury cases when it comes. Currently, the administration lets people do that only on a selected basis. It shouldn't be that way. Everybody should have that right. As long as it's not criminal work and it's allowed legally and statutorily.
I'm going to agree with what they both said. There's obviously some reorganization that needs to be made, and there's some positions that we have that we don't necessarily need. So I would definitely cut those positions. Mr. Lynch mentioned the clerk's office issue, where if there is some monies that need to be collected from the clerk's office, again, why haven't we done that yet? There are things that we're just sitting on, and we're just putting out to the papers, and we're just writing letters to people, and we're not getting our butts up and going to these people face to face and getting our money. That's what we need to do. And not only that, but if we can't just sit there and go to the legislature, I will take a pay cut myself to make sure that the attorneys in the office get the pay that they deserve. Thank you.
So this question is for Mr. Conway. A couple of years ago, the Florida Supreme Court went ahead and okayed the public defender in Miami-Dade the right to ask to withdraw from cases because of a crushing workload. Is that something that you would be amenable to doing if your workload got too bad? And what other specific things can you do to maximize your lawyer's time and their ability to represent agent clients? Expand on please specific ideas and how you can get those caseloads down.
Well, addressing the first part you said, I think was it Carlos Martinez's office down in Miami? Well, I can't speak for the numbers that they had. I'm not sure how bad it was, but what I do know is from the time when I was a public defender in Broward County, I remember I thought I had so many cases that had like, I think it was 70 or 75. I thought that was a lot, and some of them laugh at me now. They're up in the 120 number. Now, so I can only use from my own experience that if I had 120 and I was trying to do the same quality of work I was doing on all of those people, and I had 75, and they were rock court cases, repeat offender cases, people who, they almost always go to trial. It really depends also the type of case it is, whether it's a first-degree felony or it's a misdemeanor. We're just talking numbers of cases, but you can't say a misdemeanor doesn't require the same amount of effort as a felony case. So I don't know what the magic number is as to when you have to say, hey, Supreme Court, we need to be withdrawn. Well, look, that's what the private defense bar is there for. That could be another example of a conflict. We're supposed to do this, but you won't give me this much money. I have a conflict of interest. And if that's what they want to do, it's just going to create, a big mess for the taxpayers. So what really has to happen, I think with the new state attorneys we got coming in, I watched some of that debate, I think they're going to see a reduction in the numbers. And I think that's what Broward needs. It's just, it's coming from them. We don't have any control of who gets arrested. So honestly, to reduce their caseloads, you can't. The cases are assigned. We have no control over the arrest process, so we have no control.
And just to be clear, was the Supreme Court allowed for 30 felonies to be withdrawn? At least it asked them to be withdrawn. So, Judge?
Yes, I certainly would do that if it was necessary, but I just listened to all the state attorney candidates, and I don't think caseload's going to be a problem anymore. It's going to be a different world in the state attorney's office, no matter who you elect. But all kidding aside, certainly if the caseloads are crushing the lawyers, I would certainly advocate to withdraw from the case for those cases for those reasons. And I know it was somewhat successful. I'm not sure how successful it was. And realigning caseloads will help as well. But all kidding aside, it's going to be a different world in 2021 when the new state attorney comes in here. I think there's going to be dramatically reduced caseloads, and it makes sense. It really does. And also the public defender's office seems to have a war with judges, the Bar Association, the Broward County Bar Association, and public defenders.
We got good time on the reason why we got that question last, so thank you.
Oh, okay.
No, I agree with what Tom said. Based upon what we saw tonight, besides Jim Lewis, who's gonna put your ass in jail, I don't think that we'll have much of an issue. But certainly there will be some times in which, if it gets too bogged down, then yeah, like we can outsource if that's the case, or figure out a way to give it to private attorneys, and like Sean said, with the conflict.
Thank you, Mr. Carwin. Do you mind giving up your last little rebuttal on that? Thanks, because we got time for, I've been told by Ms. Daniels, who's our sponsor here, we got to be done right at 9:15, otherwise it's a problem. So listen, Mr. Satz and Mr. Finkelstein, they're the incumbents, so they get a lot of criticism because that's what happens with incumbents, but you got to give credit where credit is due. So Mr. Finkelstein always was very, very, I believe, courageous and did a lot of things no other constitutional officer did, as far as publicly calling out, in the media or wherever, a lot of these racial disparity issues, driving all of that, a lot of the horrible stuff that we know goes on. I've never seen anybody else do that in that position. When he goes, there's going to be a vacuum there. So are you guys all willing to do that as forcefully as he has done? Whose question was that?
I don't know. You're in charge.
Almost definitely. I'm ready. I'm already in the courtrooms. I don't intend to leave the courtrooms. I intend to stay at the forefront. I don't intend to just be a person that sits in the paper, or I don't intend to be just a person that writes letters. I intend on being that force to be reckoned with.
I would say this, Howard's definitely been an effective advocate for the oppressed. There's no doubt about that. And I used to work at his office for a short time when he took over. But we're all capable of mistakes. And I think saying that what he said to a reporter recently, he's trying to make this the PD race into a race about race. What he said once was, and I'm just going to quote it, is what he said to the reporter. He said, the majority of our clients are people of color. So therefore, the next public defender should be a person of color. And a lot of people said, oh, okay, yeah, let's rally behind it. I think he made a mistake on that. And I would ask everybody to heed the words of Martin Luther King. Evaluate all of us by the content of our character and our message, and not the color of my skin or my gender, any of that stuff. That's why I'm running as an independent. I'm going to be in the general election. I want you all to remember me and vote independent on that day. And I think, that's just, you can't disparage everything he's done with that one comment, though. And I think it was racist. It's like saying, the majority of the people in Broward County are white, so therefore the next sheriff should be white. If you flip it around a little bit, that sounds racist, because it was. That outdated, old-style thinking needs to go. We're all here. We're all trying to do the same job, and I think it was offensive. And I think that was just one mistake made, but it shouldn't have. But I agree with you, he's been a great advocate for the oppressed, and I've watched him in court, and I admire his trial skills. But I think there were people making mistakes, and I think he was wrong on that.
Mr. Knight?
I agree to a certain extent. Howard and I were hired the same month at the Public Defender's Office by Al Schreiber. And Howard and I, he's the only guy, by the way, who had longer hair than me at the time. But anyway, Howard was the guy who was trying cases, and I was trying cases, and we had a blast. But we had different styles. And my style is not close to Howard's style. He likes the confrontational war with the judges. He likes the confrontational war with the state attorney's office. And that's not the way to accomplish things. We can create beneficial programs and cooperation with the judges and the Bar Association and still fight for the rights of our client. That will improve morale. Too many lawyers, we've already said that, leave the office prematurely. Fair distribution of the cases and justice won't be compromised.
Do you want to add anything,
No, I said what I said.
We're just trying to time this perfectly. There's this is something a lot of people ask. There was a video link up with Mr. Schreiber's office that went away because that was in-face jail visits were something where that had to happen, and they do have to happen. I get that. But are you guys okay with Skype and a lot of this technology where people prepare for trial at the last minute, they need to talk to the guy in jail real quick, and it has to happen right away? Are you guys comfortable with that? Skype or whatever it is,
Oh, you want me to go? Come on, make a decision.
All right, so I brought that up a moment ago. I brought that up a moment ago about the video link that hooked up. So I'm glad someone brought that up as a question. That was part of my platform. One of the things I want to do is increase the use of technology. We paid for all that equipment as taxpayers. There was a video hookup. And you don't go there no attorney's going to do that in lieu of visiting with the clients, but sometimes you just need a piece of information. You got to get something to the client, you just got to hear something from them. But what now? They got to drive out there. The jails are up in northern Broward County. There's 2 up there. You got the nice downtown main one. But when you go up there, they're not reimbursing for mileage anymore either. So, you're taking this away from them, but you want them to go up there and get a piece of information. I get it. No one who's working in my office is going to not see their clients. We're going to find out about that. But you're not going to be on a time clock. You're going to come and go as you wish. So technology needs to be improved. I don't know why we weren't using that. It's there already. The sheriff helps the sheriff out. I took a lot of heat when I put that on there. People were criticizing me, saying, "Oh, you're worried about the sheriff's workload?" No, it's just we're all taxpayers, and the sheriffs have one less people that they have to transport and give you that little name tag and all that. It saves resources all the way around. So the sheriff probably wants it too. So I think that needs to be put back in place. It's already there.
I actually had use of that system when I was in Jacksonville. I practiced in Jacksonville at the Public Defender's Office in Jacksonville before I came here, and we had that system. And I thought it was amazing because of the fact that, like what David said, you could have the use of being able to you talk to your clients at the last minute if you're bogged down, you're in trial. Let's say that you've been in trial for a matter of weeks and you haven't had an opportunity to make it out to the jail, or you have no gas because you don't get paid as much. It makes sense that we can have use of this particular system. There are 3 jails actually in Pompano, and then there's one main jail here. And we need access to that because sometimes we just have so many people in custody. I know I for a time I had over 40.
I tend to agree. I think the technology is great. I'm a little concerned about the security of that technology. Attorney-client conversations are very, very important, and they must, someone has to guarantee me, and someone independently has to guarantee me that those are secure ways of discussing things with your client, or I want nothing to do with it.
We're going to move to the last question here. There is a perception that there's a strained relationship between the public defender's office, the state attorney's office, the judiciary, and even the clerks. Is that perception wrong? How will you go about improving these relationships And how closely should all these agencies be working together given the built-in adversarial nature of their roles? Your Honor.
Should I continue with what I was saying earlier?
Sure.
I think it's very important. The benefits outweigh any problems that are created, and you can tailor it where you get tremendous benefits. You know, I had meetings with, when I was moved to criminal, I had a meeting with the public defenders and the state attorneys and the probation officers and the clerks, and it worked out great. You worked out some ground rules, things of that nature. There's also these programs. The diversionary programs need the cooperation of all the players in the criminal justice system, not just the public defender, not just the state attorney. State attorney has not done a good enough job in that. And I think that although the state attorney's office seems to have more camaraderie with the players than the public defender's office, I think the public defender has to step up to the plate. And you can get a lot more accomplished by some cooperation without letting your guard down for trials than you can going to war. Just doesn't make sense.
So listen, I gotta do it, sorry, Tom. But you were judge an awful long time, so we, a lot of times.
Only 32 years.
You got some, Broward County, you got some really badly behaving judges, and you gotta protect your guys, your attorneys. Are you gonna be able to mix it up and really go hard after something you may have been a colleague?
Absolutely. I was administrative judge of the county court. I was head of the civil division of the county court. I was administrative judge of the circuit civil division. I dealt with these people, and some are better than others, obviously. But I don't think it's a problem. You know, their guard is not going to be up when I'm sitting down discussing things with them, because I'm not going to be at war with them for no reason just because they're judges. Or I won't get rid of employees because they're related to judges, which happened on a regular basis.
Thank you.
I think the public defenders, the state attorneys, the judges, the clerks, even sometimes probation officers who are in the courtroom, we're the meat of the criminal justice system. So, and we all have our roles. And sometimes our roles are going to be adversarial. And then sometimes our roles are that we're going to work together and we're going to get things done. Now, it really depends on the situationship that you have in your courtroom. Will the public defender need to step up? Of course. I think that how we've been doing it and the way that we've been doing it has not been the best way possible. However, at some point, we're going to need to realize that not everyone's an enemy, and that, we need to get things done efficiently and in order.
It's all great. One of the things I notice is having press conferences when a judge does something wrong might not be the best way to go. And one of the easiest things to do in 24 years of having done this, 15 years of my own business, what you learn is that you just talk to people. And I didn't know that starting out at first. A lot of times when I was young, I was, trying to fight every fight sometimes, do a writ of prohibition, do a writ of this. And it gave me a lot of appellate experience. But what I found, a lot of times these judges are so approachable. You just call them up, you can go talk, make sure there's a state attorney there, of course, if it's an issue that they're having with one of your attorneys. But one of the things I remember when Bill and I were trial partners back at the public defender's office, we got called in as like his squad on this one judge. He was giving people a hard time, don't get me wrong. But what we were doing was, it was a very effective way we did it. You were just laying a record. We had some very good, Diane Cudahy and another attorney sat us down and told us exactly what they wanted us to do. They were the experienced appellate attorneys in our office, and sure enough, we got exactly what I needed in that case. They taught us ways to do it. So I think the best way to handle those things is just go to the judges directly, talk to them just off the record. The judges appreciate that. I do it now, sidebar. We go, Your Honor, what you said. Instead of getting them upset, I think that's just, it's common sense. You do that in any business. Everybody in every business, you deal with people that way. You just go up to them and tell them what's going on and try to straighten it out.
We're staring at the clock now and in full panic mode. So,
You don't look bad.
well, thank you. We have time for a 1-minute closing statement from each of you. Your Honor, if you can start and we move to your right.
Sure. Once again, my name is Tom Lynch, running for Public Defender. As you all know, I'll be very quick. There are a couple quick issues that we've already discussed. We need highly trained lawyers because public defender clients deserve great lawyers, and that's going to be taken care of if I'm lucky enough to be your next public defender. Caseload for all. That's very important. It will alleviate the caseload of the newer people, and the trial lawyers can actually try cases. You heard the conviction rate was like very, very slim when people went to trial, yet you have lawyers in the public defender's office that aren't trying cases. And experienced 20, 25-year lawyers, not the way to go. And get the money for the clerk. That's it.
Hi everyone, once again my name is Ruby Lenora Green, your next Broward County Public Defender, and it's time for a new generation of leadership. They're not going to be any more don't go to court because you're a chief. There's not going to be any more threats if you join an organization just because your boss don't like a person in the organization. There's not going to be no more not training your misdemeanor attorneys because I said so. There's not going to be any more of that. We're going to have some zealous advocates at the Broward County Public Defender's Office. We're going to help increase their pay.